only from the standpoint that the homosexual part, saying homosexuality
Yeah.
is a negative versus in the same sex.
Okay.
Same sex attraction.
Okay.
So that might be why they would use that, because if it's negativity already.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
The attraction comes from within.
Right.
It's natural for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Where any attraction that person has is real. The other term, homosexuality, society has always viewed as something of a choice, I think.
Okay. More of a cultural identity, homosexuality is. I kind of think of it all as kind of an all-encompassing thing. Like if you're a homosexual, it means your entire life is sort of about your sexual desires, right? Versus, like you noticed in the film, the guy David, he says, I'm not a homosexual. He said, I am David. You know, I am a person. Not just defined by his sexual feelings, but same-sex attraction kind of puts it in perspective, that it's sort of one aspect of your person, but that there are many other qualities of a person than just their sexual feelings. So that's why I think many people use same-sex attraction versus homosexual, which kind of encompasses your whole identity, you know, which is going a little too far.
And just the fact that it says homosexual, it's just right there, sexual, and that's what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Same-sex attraction is, like you said, just one aspect. It could be multiple things, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just one thing. And so, yeah,
Right.
much easier to turn.
Well, I think we are multifaceted as people, and we have so many interests.
Mm-hmm.
So that one part, that's just one fragment of what we really are. And I think culturally, we've blown it up to the point that's your identity.
Mm-hmm.
Your attraction is who you are.
Right. Yeah, we sort of, it's like
Forget that you're a son, you're, you know,
Yeah.
you're
where our sexual feelings become, it's the most important thing in the world, you know, in our culture.
right. And it's, you know, it's hip and it's
Mm-hmm.
like a movement.
So same-sex attraction, the term tries to put it in perspective. It just is one dimension of your person. You're not just a person who wants, you're not just something that wants sex. You're a person, you know, created by God and with many different facets of a personality. Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to find it. Are these people born this way? Is it a physical thing, or is it a psychological development? How does the church view that? They don't care about either of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just take what it is to the end result. I mean, you have to be, wouldn't you have to be born that way? And if you are, then God created you. And if God created you,
I think the church would say that we don't know the origins. There's never been a proof of any kind of DNA or gene or anything. There's been sort of bad reports that there is, somebody discovers that, but it's not true. Nobody's ever discovered anything like that. You notice in the film, you know, in the beginning especially, some of them talking about some aspects of their upbringing. So you heard one of them talk about that they were abused. Another one said they were made fun of because they weren't very good in sports. So I know some psychologists kind of would point to those things as saying that those are environmental factors that could help nourish that attraction, a same-sex attraction in a person. So there's a lot of psychological evidence out there to point to those kinds of things in someone's upbringing. The church wouldn't, I've never heard the church say that that's the only explanation, because, you know, there must be something sort of in someone's heart and mind that sort of contributes to it. We just don't really have the completely exact answer to that. It's still a bit of a mystery.
I remember even as a kid going to Catholic school, as a boy, we should call him Sissy Boy. I don't mean to make fun. He always hung out with the girls, and he enjoyed hanging out. And we couldn't figure out, why does he enjoy hanging out with the girls? Because when you're little boys, you don't want nothing to do with them. But he did. But he did at the time, and he got along with them, and they got along with him. He couldn't figure it out. And he just grew up and he's same sex.
Yeah. Okay, yes, Jewel.
I want to point out, it was not the Catholic Church that said it was disorder. I remember, I'm a psychologist. I remember going to school, graduate school, and they had memorized all the diagnostic categories, DSM-3 and ICD-9, and it was the American Psychiatric Association that said same-sex involvement is a disorder. I have the old manuals, okay, we're talking the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, okay, and they pointed out, and you saw it in the movie, now whether that was delivered or not, this is not the case of every single person. Every one of those people talked about this whole problem of not able to identify with the same-sex parent. So you had that woman saying her mother was ice. She never identified with her mother. So she's always looking for a woman to identify with at the developmental level. The same thing with the men. Now you can have some very good parents, but they don't realize, you know, the parent who has 2 or 3 jobs, the other one who has 2 or 3 jobs, children need their mommies and their daddies. And I think I shared with you the American College of Pediatrics within, now this is not a religious group, they're any faith and no faith. Within 48 hours of the Supreme Court decision, they said this is a tragedy for the children of America because every child has a right to grow up with each, to have a good relationship with each sex. And it's one thing, people choose that when they're older, that's a whole other thing. And then the biological piece, maybe 2% are born with mixed up organs. It's like 1 or 2% in the whole human race, and they're millions. Okay, so you can't use that one. But there's a whole thing of hormone. There are some women who truly believe they don't have a sexual attraction. Women tend to get hormone studies done much more frequently than men. Men don't bother unless they think they have cancer or their hearts or whatever. But women, because their cycle of pregnancy and fertility, they very often, probably half the women in this room have had their doctor say, let's do a hormone thing when we do your blood work. And they find they're too low on this or they're too low on that. So that's, you see it with women right after pregnancy, the hormones are whoosh, they're not attracted to their husbands even when they're low. Am I right? I don't know, because I'm not married yet. Let me tell you, I've yet to meet the lady that's going to turn me on. But, you know, so there's some biological base, but every one of those people, now could have been part of the production. They were all saying, I want somebody to love me. That was the bottom line. And then they got, eventually, by the grace of God, because it is grace, you know, some of you don't know what a consecrated virgin is, but I'm a consecrated virgin. You can't live the life unless you get the grace. Same thing with our priests who are faithful. You can't get, same thing with married couples. How many married couples have to practice chastity? People don't even think of that. People go off to war, people get sick, people have to be apart from each other, all kinds of stuff. But they can't just get involved with their co-worker because they're attracted.
Just to make a point, what you said about I remember learning that the American Psychological Association, up until 1973, said that same-sex attraction was a disorder, was a psychological illness. But then they changed in 1973, and they took a vote, you know, at their meeting, and they just said, we now don't say that anymore. Now it's perfectly natural. It's there might be other issues involved with somebody struggling, but it's not that the attraction itself. It would be more the anxiety or depression that's connected to the fact that they're not accepted or something like that. So. But people would say that that's a bit political. They said it was almost politically they made that decision because the culture was sort of going in a certain direction.
The American Psychiatric Association, which is slightly different, but we're on the same track. We're a few years ahead. But you also see that people who are heterosexual who wind up in a bad relationship, either a marriage or a long-term relationship with somebody of the opposite sex, I'm sure all of you have heard over the years some women say all men are jerks. And you hear women say all men are stupid.
Right. Another dimension of it is this idea of sort of as a spectrum. Like, it's a bit simplistic to just say that somebody's heterosexual or homosexual. It's you're one or the other. It's when you think of it in terms of a spectrum, that people could have attraction to, let's say, someone of the opposite sex to different degrees, or they could be attracted to someone of the same sex but to different degrees. You could have someone in a condition, not saying that this is right or great, you know, there would still be a disorder to it, but somebody could be attracted to both genders, you know, or at different points, you know, more attracted to same gender, less attracted to the opposite gender. It's really different points along a spectrum. So it just shows kind of the complexity and the mystery that's still a part of this issue. It's just kind of overly simplistic just to kind of lump someone in a category. There's a lot of complexity going on in somebody psychologically that would be leading to those different feelings. So, yes, Diane.
This really happened.
Okay. These are always interesting when you.
Yeah, when I was secretary, when I was the parish secretary, I
Uh-huh.
got a phone call from Johnny, who was Catholic.
Are you getting these questions on the camera, by the way, or?
What's that?
Are you getting these questions on the camera? Because otherwise, all you hear is me going, "Mm-hmm, yep, that's right."
The little bars are moving.
Oh, okay. All right. So what?
So Johnny called, he wasn't from St. Greg's, but he was Catholic, and his partner was Catholic. And they adopted a baby.
Yes.
And they wanted to have the baby baptized, and all the churches they called said no. Now, I can tell you what we did.
What did you say?
Well, I asked one of the priests at that time
Okay.
what to say. And he said, who's in the state of grace? Which one of the two of them
Yeah.
who are raising this child is in a state of grace?
Right.
And I said, neither one of them are. You
Right.
And so that was
Well,
what we...
yeah.
But
Okay, that's a good one. Pope Francis said something a year or two ago about the idea of not withholding baptism, right? So it's kind of you have to balance two things with that. One is the fact of the baptism of the child, right, which we believe is a good thing that enables the child to reach salvation. It's the only certain way to know that you can reach salvation, to be freed of original sin. So you don't want to withhold baptism from someone, you know, too easily. You want to give the baptism if at all possible. And Pope Francis says something kind of in that direction. But at the same time, you want to make sure that the child is raised in the Catholic faith, right? That's also part of our responsibility, right, Father Jay, as priests or deacons or all of us. So that would be a question there. You know, you would have to sit down with the couple, you know, and I guess somebody could argue that, you know, they're automatically not going to raise the child in the faith because they're living in a relationship that, you know, is kind of automatically not the church's teaching. But I guess there could be a way where they could sort of maybe teach the child that this is not what I don't know. I don't know many people in that situation or people that would do this, but like that you shouldn't live this way yourself. I don't know, that could be a possibility. But we really would have to make sure, you know, before you just do that.
Yeah.
I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Father Jay, but I don't know that the church has made any kind of statement on that, right? It still leaves it up to the pastor.
yeah, the priest talked to them, but I never heard back from them.
Yeah. The issue there would be, you just have to be careful when you deny baptism to someone. It
almost doesn't make sense to do it because all of us are sinners.
Yeah.
What difference does it make if the two same-sex parents are not in the state of grace? Everyone commits sins every day.
Yeah. Well, I guess the idea is that they're in a kind of a permanent relationship that is not what the church would accept. You know, unless they were living as like in a chaste relationship, I guess.
The baby's a separate person. Why would you withhold baptism from the baby?
Yeah, well, you do want to make sure that the baby is raised in the faith, though. You know, like if parents say, "Or I'm not going to teach the faith to the child," then, in a sense, the baptism won't be achieved because they won't be raised in the. They have to be raised in the faith. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they are not raised.
Yeah, well, that's wrong too.
I mean, so.
Yeah.
For years, you see, we know this. That's not fair. And then my question would become, because then we are condemning them. We're not giving that child a fair shake. That's not fair. So what do we do if,
Right.
if two unmarried people come and say, we want our child baptized, and the grandparents, the aunts, uncles, or members of our parish, they are responsible for the faith.
Yeah.
This is the question.
Right.
Do we then allow that?
Well, it would be the same kind of issue.
So then why would we do this? If someone would vouch, I mean, I don't.
Well, first of all, just the fact that we do those other examples and that happens a lot doesn't mean it's okay. You know, that's wrong as well. You know, but you're just saying that we do it regularly. No, you're right. We should be consistent. You know, and that we shouldn't kind of isolate this issue from other ones that are, you know, say opposed to church teaching. Yeah.
It's as if you're punishing the baby for the sins of the parents.
Right. Well, the church does say clearly, though, that you should make sure that if you give baptism, that the child is raised in the faith. I mean, that's very clearly stated. So,
To help raise a child.
yeah, that could.
Right.
That's the way to look at it. Yeah.
There might be family support that would,
Yeah.
assist the child in the.
Yeah. That's a way.
My question actually,
To do
I
it?
want to ask about receiving communion.
Okay. Just a second. Anyone else about the baptism question yet? Okay. Just hold that question. Yeah. Oh, Father Jay. Finally, someone wise.
I think that that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I never ran across that. I only denied baptism once in all my priesthood, and that was somebody who I knew. I knew her as a kid. I baptized the first baby, and you know, well, we're going to go to church, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And never came anywhere near the church. So when she had her second baby, I said no. You know, it's the only time I ever did that. It had nothing to do with sex, sexual orientation. I think that's a really good question. And I guess I would agree with what you said, that all of us, I think, have baptized babies where, in fact, the couple was not going to, they weren't churchgoers, you know, and they may or may not have been married in the church, or maybe even not even married, maybe. And I think we would still, usually, like you said, we don't want to deny baptism. So we would baptize those, even though we think, well, they're probably not going to go to church, but they will. I don't know what the answer to that question is. That's a really good question. Yeah, you brought it up.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. Yeah.
Specific, what would Jesus want for the best of that child? That's what I always go back to that. He's crying out there for, you know, very looking down on us, how screwed up we are.
Right.
What would he want? My mother, I know my mother would see to it that my children would know, love, and serve the Lord as best as she could if I were, you know, if God were not in that situation. But, you know, that's the thing. What would Jesus want?
I think Jesus would want truth and love. He would want both of them. And I think sometimes in our culture we sort of emphasize the love and mercy part, but it's not in the fullness of what those things are, because they must be combined with truth in order for them to be truly love, right? So that's where you get in the idea that, like, if you share a certain moral teaching with someone, that you're not being merciful because you're expecting someone to live a certain way, and that therefore you're not being loving. That's sort of a very powerful belief in our culture, but it's the church would say that the loving thing is to share the truth with them. And if somebody's not in the right kind of relationship, that the loving thing is not to just say, oh, no big deal, just be happy. Although in the video you see that they're not in actually happy. They were saying they were actually very miserable when they were living that out. But the loving thing is to share the teaching with them and say, in order to be happy, you should live according to God's design for your life that we're all expected to follow.
Would Jesus want that baby to be baptized? That's my question. What would Jesus say? Would he say baptize that baby? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think in doubt you have to err with baptizing. The only thing though is but there should be some attempt, I think, to say, like that the parents are not living according to church teaching. Like you have to be also sharing that in order for that to be the complete gospel.
Father?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
Is the Catholic Church, are they marrying gay couples?
No.
Yeah, well then how is that all accepted then, even to baptize a child?
Well, I guess it would be that the baptism is a separate issue from the relationship that the parents are in. Right?
But even if the parents are sinners, doesn't it say something about their love for the child and for the church, that they want the child to be baptized in the church? And if you withhold it, aren't you also risking pushing them away from the church? And they may never return. Isn't it a better thing to baptize the child and hopefully bring them back into the church? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in order for them to love the child, though, they also should share with the child the church's teachings, right? So they're not really doing that if they're saying it's okay to be in a homosexual relationship by the fact that they're living in that. I know it's like this. It's very culturally. This sounds very unsophisticated or backwards, but that the church does not approve homosexual relationships. Like, there would be like the one person in the show said that there could be like a friendship dimension to it, but in order to be, her position was actually probably almost pushing the limit of the church's teaching, because she's saying that you could be in a homosexual friendship in which two people who are attracted to each other can be friends. Well, I mean, one of the major issues with that, though, still would be that, two people who are attracted to each other, say that they're living together, like, chances are they're going to sin, they're going to act out sexually. So, can you have a chaste relationship with two people who are attracted to each other homosexually? I don't know, as a priest, I don't know that I would sort of say to someone it's okay, to live with someone who's not your spouse, who you're attracted to. Most of us who are in that situation would have sex with the person, but yeah, maybe there could be a friendship dimension in there, but they're still called to chastity.
But aren't we condemning that baby to hell?
How? By doing
holding baptism?
Yeah, and I think we're saying that you should really kind of give the baptism, if at all possible, combined with telling the parents that they're, dealing with that issue as well.
In any case, shouldn't we baptize the baby? And should the question of not baptizing the baby really come into play? Aren't you condemning that baby?
Well, not really, because the baby, like, as far as the baby's salvation, it's not really the baby's fault, that if say they died, like in 2 months, right? We kind of, right now the church sort of emphasizes the mercy of God in that situation if there wasn't baptism. I know traditionally the church would say you're not baptized, you're going to hell, that it was much more that emphasis. But again, there is a canon and canon law that says you should not baptize a child if you know that they're not going to be raised in the faith. So.
But how do you know?
Yeah, well, you have to make a prudential judgment. Father Jay, then we'll go.
Sunday at the 12 o'clock mass, we had the confirmation thing, and the church was full, right? And people were all the way up both aisles and all that, which was wonderful. It was really nice. But next Sunday, most of them, or many
Oh,
of them,
right,
are
right.
not going to be here.
Right.
So they're not practicing either, you know.
Yeah.
I think you made a lot of sense about, you know, if this couple is coming and they want to be baptized, again, you have to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a pretty positive thing, because again, so many other people who are baptized, who are going to be confirmed, they don't go to church.
And
Yeah.
the seed is planted, that's so important. I think if you just shut the door, it's like, oh, okay, later. And,
I think it's better to say yes,
Yes.
welcome them in, and maybe they'll have a change of heart. If you say no,
Another issue you have to deal with is the baptism ceremony, where you know the priest is standing there, you know, with baptizing the child, and you have the homosexual couple, you know, standing there looking over the, you know, so one of you was going to ask about communion, right? So this kind of gets into that, because, and people ask this a lot, like, why does the church say certain people shouldn't receive communion? We're all sinners, you know. So the idea with that is that there's a scandal dimension, which sounds like a very strong word, but it's really that we have to be conscious that when we sort of just admit someone say to communion, that you're showing everyone there, the church thinks that you're showing everyone there that this is okay, that it's okay to live that lifestyle. Say if it's a politician who's pro-abortion, you know, marching up there, receiving communion, someone who is, you know, in a sort of an open public relationship that's not in accord with church teaching. It could be homosexual, it could be someone who's divorced and remarried. So that's where the church is coming from with that. And there are certain categories of people that the church does single out with that, because it believes that, say, it's so important that those teachings are brought out in our culture because there's so much confusion about those particular teachings. Say, or like abortion is a especially horrible, you know, problem in our society, so we have to kind of give special attention to politicians who are just sort of in favor of that. You know, you can't just sort of say it's no big deal and just let everyone come to communion. It's not saying that everyone else is perfect going up there, but they're more like private. I don't know. I guess it's not kind of just excusing everyone else in their sins. It's just saying that there are particular categories that are public, very public, and we have to just kind of single them out. So, okay.
Very good.
Probably okay. All right, well, thank you for coming. And what's the next topic? Oh, marriage, okay. Oh, okay.